If you go into the webinar section, you'll find the newest one sitting at the top. And this webinar will take its place after tonight or within 2 or 3 days, whenever I get time to actually upload everything and then have it there. But I'm going to reset today and go here because I see a lot of people still struggling to get into a project. And I've never discussed how to find your first deal. How do I actually start looking at hotspots? I'm not discussing about the due diligence portion here, but I'm going to start discussing how to find your first deal. And it's a very simple process that I do sitting behind my computer. And I have found all my deals exactly the way it is. But before we actually find the deal, we got to make sure that we found a good suburb that has the capital growth, that has all those things. Now, there are some students here who have just joined the course, and obviously there are some students here who have already been doing this course. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have actually gone through each video in this section. So what this webinar is all about is an overview of this entire section, because I think it is very important for you to understand and sink your teeth into this, because if you don't, it's all about risk mitigation, and the risk mitigation would actually start from this point on. So the thing is, are you too late to start? Basically, it's too late to start learning if you're already in a project. Now, from the names that I'm seeing here, I've already got one person who's already in a project. He's actually, at the moment, he's trying to get into another project, which is fantastic. And I'm talking about you, Craig, which is great. You actually do make me proud. So it's really good. Keep up the good work. So the reason I go through this process is to make sure that I've got an extra bit of cushion, or an extra layer of cushion, when I'm selecting my deals. So and all this is done basically to start reducing the risk and so on. And the good part is that once you absorb certain knowledge and everything, it doesn't let you remain where you started from. So you are a different person once you've gone through this. So, but before you actually start, I know that a lot of people who are attending this webinar still haven't got a deal. And before you start your deal, I would want you to understand and determine your capacity to be able to do the deal. And that capacity determined by your equity contribution in the deal, which is the developer's equity contribution, and your borrowing capacity. And borrowing capacity, you could pick up a phone, get in touch with the finance broker, and they will tell you what your borrowing capacity is. But because of post GFC, because of the market going absolutely spastic in terms of property prices skyrocketing, and APRA putting in new condition, the equity contributions have changed. They have actually changed from the time I started this course to the time that they are now, and they are two different kinds of lenders now. They are the top four lenders, and then there are the secondary lenders, which are basically the banks that are already owned by the top four lenders. For example, Bank of Melbourne or St. George or whatever. So some of the either one of the bigger banks already own that. So they are no different than the bigger banks, the big fours, and the big fours actually call the shots for all the smaller ones as well. But there are a lot of third-party lenders or third-tier lenders who would lend based on your borrowing capacity or your equity contribution and the equity that's already in the deal or in your other properties that you've got, and they work slightly differently. And that's what actually instigated me to update the feasibility as well, because at the moment the way the smart feasibility calculator version 3 works, it is based on, I'll actually show you, it's actually based on the GRV. And if you go to the top four lenders, they work on TDC, which is total development cost. So there's just small minor changes that I will be making to it and make this whole process a lot more easier. But what I want you to understand is this. Anytime you're trying to look at a project, and see in your head, you say, okay, I can put 4 townhouses on it and I can put 6 townhouses on it. I want you to come up with the GRV, which is the gross realization value or the end value of that project in your head. Write it down, put it somewhere, and then see, okay, let's say the total gross realization value of the project that I'm going to do, I'm going to do 4 townhouses, each one would be 600,000. So my GRV is going to be 2.4 mil, basically. And what I want you to come up with is 25% of that 2.4 mil. The reason I say that is because from my experience and of all the projects that I've already completed or I'm doing, and I see that over and over again in my feasibilities, and I'll show you different feasibilities for different projects. The equity versus GRV is coming at about anywhere between 15% to 25%. Now, if you want to cushion yourself and make sure that you don't get caught out in a project, you need to make sure that you've got at least 30% just to make sure that you are at a certain comfort level. So the total GRV, so the end value of your entire project is $8 million. Make sure you've got 25% of that $8 million in bank or in equity or in cash, or you've got investors that can come up with that kind of money, all clubbed together so that you can do that project. If you haven't got that money, then this the first thing that you got to make sure. That basically means that you got to find a project that has a lower GRV, because you have to work backwards before you get in. So this is a thumb rule. Now, this SFC 3.0 actually tells me exactly how much money I would need to have up front in order to be able to do the project. But what I try and do is to be able to get an idea as a thumb rule of the amount of money that I must have in order to get into this project, in cash or in equity, that I can either mortgage with the lender or I can offer as security to the lender. I need to make sure that I've got at least 25% in my pocket. And to be on the safer side, I need to make sure that I've got 30% in the bank in order to do a project. If I haven't got that, that means I need to scale down the project. So I need to find another project where the GRV is just enough so that whatever equity that I've got is enough to do that project. So that should be between the 15 to 25%, and I'll show you some examples on this. This is a 5 townhouse development that I'm looking at the moment, and I'll show you another one. This is another 12 townhouse project that I'm about to start construction sometime in first week of November. I've got the settlement coming up 30th of September, and this is a really good project actually, but it's oh sorry, I went to the wrong side. I'll show you what this project is all about. This is a 12 townhouse project, and it's already gone on the side. So this is in Edithvale. The average value on this project is about 670 for each townhouse, and I want to stay in that zone. The reason I want to stay in that zone is because in Melbourne, if you start going closer to the city, and I'm saying not even that close, I mean I'm saying 25 kilometers from the city or 20 kilometers from the city, the value of townhouses and everything starts going up to 800, 900 and $1 million. And at this stage, looking at where the market is at, I want to stay away from those $1 million townhouses. And the reason for that is they take longer to sell. I'll give you an example. I did a 4 townhouse project. Luckily, we had enough cash and everything, which is this. It's all completed. These are the renders, but these are the actual photos. The project's now complete, and they are 1.1 mil and 950,000 and so on. And I'm finding it hard to move them, although they have the best location. Everything is great, but they will eventually sell. The good part is that we are going into spring and summer, so I'm hopeful that they will move fairly quickly. and they are right next to the beach as well. So this project is all complete, everything is great, but I'm finding it harder to move them, and that's why I want to stay away from the $1 million mark or anything above $1 million, because when the government puts restriction on the lending criterias and cuts down the borrowing capacity, increases the stress rate, increases the rate where where the calculation of your of your daily expenses and your living expenses and everything, they increase the benchmark, which basically shaves off the borrowing capacity of people. The properties that are hit the most are the $1 million properties. So those are the ones that are hit first. So that means the buyers evaporate in the market. But the good part is that I recently read an article in Melbourne where because they put restriction on non-resident buyers now, so all the people who were missing out or were being outbid by the Chinese buyers are now coming back in the market, and they're now picking up properties because now they're saying they've got less competition. So that's a good thing though. So something like this also has a GRV versus equity at 17.62, and I'll show you another example of another project, and this is about 15%. So anywhere between 15 to 25. If you want to find out whether or not you can do a project, just look at the total GRV of the project and say, okay, have I got 25 to 30% of equity of the GRV in order to do this project? Now that won't be the exact same amount, but it is a very good measure to quickly find out whether or not you can do this project. So today's lesson or today's coaching call is basically based on how to find your deal or where to start and so on. And there's actually, I'm gonna update this property economics video, so it's gonna be a lot longer video and with a lot more detail, but that'll happen sometime in November. But you should watch this video to understand where the market is going, so that you can keep an eye out for what you were doing in your area. So if I ever wanted to find out for me to be able to get into a project, I always make sure that whether or not that area has enjoyed any capital growth and whether or not there is capital growth on the charts for that suburb. If I see that it's more flat or more going towards south, I tend to stay away from it, and the reason for that is I want to start developments are not an overnight thing. Especially if you haven't got plans and permit, you go into the council, it takes about 6-7 months to come out of the council in Brisbane, but in Melbourne it could take you 9 to 12 months to come out of the council. And even then, somebody, if you had a nasty objector, they could take you to VCAT, and you might not be able to be in and out of the council within 12 months. So there's time there, so you need to make sure that you allow for those things. So the suburbs that you pick up first have to be dependent upon the end value of what you're going to develop, because that determines whether or not you've got the chips to sit on that table, so to speak. And the second thing is whether or not that area has some capital growth. So all I do in order to find out and start shortlisting my suburbs is that I just Google something like growth suburbs in Melbourne, or I'll Google something like Melbourne suburbs with growth potential. Now you could do the same thing and put Brisbane, Sydney, or whichever city you live in over here to start getting some articles. And the whole job is to start clicking on these things and start seeing what they look like. So say for example, I clicked on one of the articles which talks about which Melbourne suburbs offer the best property price growth potential. Now I also look at the date these articles were written, because if they were too old, these articles have no meaning. They were just fluff. But it would be a good idea to pick something up in 2013 if you come across an article written 2-3 years ago, and then you look at the suburbs that they were talking about, and then you go back and see what the median price was and compare it and see whether or not that the guy who wrote that article was any good. So they're talking about Epping, they're talking about Sunshine Precinct, they're talking about City of Casey, They've been talking about this for so long that it's not funny. They're talking about the rest of the top 10, and they're talking about Logan City and all these things. So what I would do here is whatever city I am in, I'll do a research, something like that, and go to maybe page 1 or 2 and pick out some of the suburbs and start writing the names of the suburbs down. I'll like another article I found in the first 2 pages was Melbourne's top investment suburbs for yield and capital growth, and I'll go down and see. Now they're talking about better for capital growth. They're saying Mount Waverley, Box Hill South, St Kilda East. I can tell you right now, I live in Melbourne. These suburbs, as a developer, for me are untouchable because your buy-in into these suburbs is over $1 million. The value of the land is over $1 million, and when you get in, yeah, the yield growth and everything is fantastic. But if I was to buy in Mount Waverly today and expect that 39.7% growth next year, it's not going to happen. So they have already enjoyed their growth potential. So now what the growth is going to be, you can't keep having like a 40% growth year on year on year. So if you get into Mount Waverly now, you would be spending too much money to get in there. So I would want to stay away from this. I actually try and look at better for capital growth in terms of units because that's what I'll be developing. Again, some of these suburbs like Bentley, Baldwin, even Flemington and Altona, I want to stay away from. First, Altona is more logistically challenging for me because it's too far away from where I work and what I do. But I'll look at Chelsea. I'm already doing a couple of projects in Chelsea. This is actually, I've done 2 projects in Chelsea. Better for yield. Why do you want to look at yield? Because eventually, if you are developing an investor product, you would want to make sure that that suburb will provide a yield so that you can move them quicker. So all I'm doing now is going through these suburbs, picking out the ones that I like, writing them down, and just coming up with my own short list. It's a preliminary short list, and all I want to do is find out what suburbs are doing well, what are people saying about, what are they predicting the capital growth to be in certain suburbs. So they're talking about Sunshine West. This is in the western suburbs, and so on. So I'll keep looking exactly the way that I'm looking now. So they're talking about top 10 Melbourne suburbs of 2015, and then they've got articles of top 10 Sydney suburbs, top 10 Perth suburbs for 2015 and 16. So if I've got a student here, Bob, who's from Perth, you should click on this and see whether or not this was correct, whatever their prediction was. Now they are saying top 10 Melbourne suburb for 2015. Mount Waverly is by far 100% correct because Mount Waverly right next to Glen Waverly have enjoyed the maximum growth in all of Australia. They are close to 40%, and even Glen Waverly is close to 40%. And I can actually say that I live in Mount Waverly, which is fantastic. And the good part is that I bought my property over 10 years ago. Which is pretty good, and I feel happy about it. And Chelsea. And I am doing a development here in Chelsea. And it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake that I'm at good suburbs or at right places at the right time. I follow these things, and I don't do anything different to what I teach. I do exactly the same thing when I'm looking for stuff, and I'm doing it, and I'm looking for projects and so on. Now Chelsea's on the coastline, along the bay, and I'll show you where it is in a second. This is top 10 suburbs in Sydney. So if you're from Sydney, you should be going down and looking at all these things. Which one is within your budget? So if you look at townhouses, find out that if there's a 3 townhouse project that you could do in Forestville, what is the end value of each townhouse in Forestville, and see if you can do a 4 townhouse project. So make sure, as a thumb rule, let's say, I don't know what Forestville is because I'm not from Sydney, but let's say Forestville end value is 800,000. and you want to do 4, that's 3.2 mil. Have you got 30% or 3.2 mil? And that's how easy it is to just start. It's a process of elimination of what you want to drop out and what you want to concentrate on. So this is exactly how I move further. What's in store for the property market in 2016-17 financial year? So all I'm doing is I'm just browsing the internet and coming up with a list of my own, that these are the suburbs that I want to work on. And I'll tell you how I shortlist all of this. So say for example, this is Melbourne, and I'll show you where Chelsea is. Chelsea is somewhere here. So this is Bond Beach. Bond Beach is the next suburb. So this is where Chelsea is. So if you go to realestate.com.au and click on invest and put Melbourne, you could also put let's say Brisbane City, and you'll see that everything in the darker red or that maroon or that blood red thing has gone through the roof. So I don't want to be in this area. I don't want to be in this area that has already gone through the roof. Yes, eventually, as a long-term investment, if you've got all that money and if you've got $1 million to get in the long term, yes, in 10 years time, of course, they are close to the city. They're already established suburbs. They will be untouchable. So if I look at it from my point of view, for my kids, I've got a son. He's almost turning 15. I've got a daughter. She's 9 years old. If I look at where my kids would be able to buy property, I'll have to go further away somewhere here, because there's no way that when my kids are ready to get into the workforce, or they're 25 years old or they're 30 years old, that they'll be able to afford something in these suburbs. Why? Because they are closer to the city, and this is how property market works. Eventually, more and more people want to live closer to the city, closer to all the amenities. But what happens is there is a ripple effect where people will say, gosh, I'm not going to pay $4 million to live in Melbourne East. I'm happy living here because this area is just as developed, it has just got all the amenities that I need. So people start moving further out. And not only that, the government works in a way so that they've got infrastructure spending happening in all these fringe suburbs, which were once fringe but are now mainstream suburbs. So that there are jobs there are people, there's a lifestyle there. So what Chelsea and Carrington. So as you can notice, these are not blood red. Edithvale and Aspendale is blood red. And although I've started here, I'm doing another build for somebody in Bond Beach, but I'm also doing another project in Edithvale. The one that I was just showing you was in Edithvale, and then I'm also doing another project in Aspendale. So I am working along this area. Why? Because I think right along the coast here there's very good lifestyle, and a lot of people from these suburbs right here who have a lot of money from Bentley East or Caulfield. These people downsize and sell their $2 million, $3 million houses and then move down here, so that they can still have the same lifestyle and be close to the beach, close to the cafe culture, and so on. So these are the suburbs that I'm operating in at the moment, and that's the reason I'm operating in there. So all I have to do is pick out that list that I've just got from the internet and start looking at all these heat maps. Now you can find all these heat maps at all different kinds of places. Now again, growth suburbs, median price under. This is another just a search term. It is no different. This is not rocket science. Whatever comes to my mind, I just put it there, and then I refine it as I go along. So that's what I do. This is another very good site. It's already in the course. I discuss it. The interface might have changed since the time that I did the last video. But if you go here and you come down here, best price growth property search, and you put in your postcode here, let's say I put 3149, which is Mount Waverly, and I go search. So it tells me what it is. 12-month growth is 5%, 24-month growth is 2%, and I can actually filter all of this by rental yield. So let me just take that off and go search. So it'll give me everything, but it from rental yield point of view, it's telling me 12-month growth. Okay, 32% down. So Newman, people from Perth would know what Newman is like. So obviously the rental yield have gone down, maybe because it's there's too many properties on the market at the moment. But what's happening at Tom Price? Why has that gone up? So you have to start looking at all of these and come up with the reasons why are these price changes or these rental yield changes and all these things are happening in that area. You got to find those reasons yourself. No one will serve these things to you in a platter ever. Even if you go to people like Residex, sites like Residex or Hotspotting, where these people sell different lists of top rental yield suburbs of Melbourne or Sydney or Australia, and you just use to pay $100 and buy the list. I've actually done all that, and that's why I'm telling you from experience that the list that you got means nothing to the developer. They even have a list of the suburbs that where you don't want to be. But if you follow this process, I guarantee you that you will not be in those suburbs. I got scared. There was this once. I'll show you the site. The site's called hotspotting.com.au. It's run by whoops, not Hottie. Hotspotting.com.au. It's run by Terry Ryder, an authority in his field. Got nothing against him, but they've got professionals. They've got the no-go zones. That's the suburb. That's the list that I've actually bought. Not today, not this year, but I bought it last year. Just to be careful of, I accidentally don't end up. Those suburbs that are in these lists are so far away, and that there is no way, because I follow this system of my own due diligence and of my own finding the hotspots, that I never end up in those suburbs anyway. And the good thing is that if you know people in finance industry, give them a call. If you know a bank manager, if you know somebody who gives out loans and everything, all the banks have this list that comes out every now and then, and that list is 100% free. You don't pay. You don't have to pay for it. It's their blacklist. Why do they do blacklist? They could have done they could have blacklisted a suburb, maybe because there are too many apartments there, or there are too many similar kind of developments going on there, or they fear that there's an oversupply there. Or they could also blacklist a suburb because, let's say, National, for example, National Australia Bank has given out too many loans in one particular suburb. Now that doesn't mean that that suburb's bad, but they could blacklist it. That means they are not lending any further in one suburb. So that is their risk mitigation strategy. So those are the things that you got to look at. So if you find out who these people are, or if you find out these key people in financial institutions, they'll tell you if there is a suburb close by that they don't want you to be in. They'll tell you stay away from this, stay away from that, and you don't need to spend this money in order to do that. So nothing against this site. They obviously do a lot of research and they are really good at what they do. But they sell all these kinds of 5 Queensland regional hotspots. And I don't do anything in regional Victoria or Queensland or anywhere regional. I tend to stay away from it because I want to be away from a lot of stuff. Now they use regional hotspot bundle and they put a poker table or a blackjack or whatever photo. What does that mean? That means if you go here, you gamble. I don't know what they're trying to say with this kind of photo. It is a gamble. So, and I don't want to do gambling. I want to take as much an informed decision as possible. So go to this side. So say for example, I go to Sydney and start looking at. So once I know, look at Sydney. Sydney's all red, which basically means everything's become untouchable. So if you want to be in Sydney, you would want to be somewhere here, Mount Victoria. I am looking at a development in Maitland in Sydney. I'll just put Maitland here. Actually, not Maitland. It's close to Maitland, but it's Box Hill. It's a 21 lot subdivision. No, not Victoria. Just sorry. It's a 21 lot subdivision, but it's happening here in Box Hill. Um, I don't own the land, somebody else I know owns it, and I'm going to facilitate the land subdivision for them. And they eventually want to build 21 townhouses on it, but that area is really good at the moment, so it's gone. So in Sydney, basically everything has gone hot, but you got to find pockets where you can afford something. So now, if it's turned red, that doesn't mean that it's untouchable. It's just that you need to find. See how when I hover over this, it tells me that the median price is 903. So just look in this corner, 903. So I don't want to be in that area at the moment. I want to find an area where the end value of what I'm developing is okay. This is a good pocket right here. So 673, that's where the median price is. Now this is Smithfield. I don't know what this area is, but people from Sydney would know what this is. But you have to find and back why you are going in this area. So this was another website that I wanted to show you where you could look at what's happening, and you could filter stuff based on median price growth or median price growth for the last 24 months or 12 months, just to get a pattern of where things are at and how things are moving in that area. Another thing that I do is, if I don't know what a suburb is all about, I would actually go there and just type the name. I would actually go to Wikipedia, type the name, and just read about it. What is it? What has it got? Now, obviously, it hasn't got a lot of information about Chelsea. I picked the wrong suburb. So let me click on City of Kingston. So this is the council for Chelsea. So I can come down here and see what this area is all about, what are the schools available there, what kind of secondary education, so what are the train stations available there, just to read up and find out more details about each suburb. Sometimes they have a lot of history. I'm just searching some suburbs just like that. So they would have history about what that suburb was, what happened to it, what's happening for it. So if there is something that's really important, it should be there. And the second port of call for me to go and start finding out more about what's happening in that suburb is to go to the council website. So if I would go, say for example, City of Kingston, which is the council there, I would usually go to their website and find out what's happening here. Property and property development, what's going on here? They've got planning scheme amendments happening, heritage places, things that I want to stay away from. They would have a lot of stuff about new major projects, so that tells me what's going on in that area. And this is just me doing preliminary research. I haven't even looked at a site yet. I'm only trying to zero in on a site, and I'm only trying to zero in on a suburb just so that I understand the dynamics of that suburb. So they're talking about an $8 million Westall hub will provide a wide range of vital community services, a one-stop shop including new public library, kindergarten, maternal. So where is this Westall hub? So I don't know what that is. I'll just Google it and I'll see what they're talking about. So I'll click on it. Okay, this is what it is. It's a new community hub. Where is that? So I'll find out. I'll just, find one information, then I'll move to another, then I'll move to another. Just moving from a macro view to a micro view of what's going on the street level. I haven't gone to the street level, and in the next video I'll get to the street level, but or in the next webinar I'll get to the street level. But all I'm doing is narrowing down my focus, and I'm trying to back everything. So if I want to go into a particular suburb, I've got things to back me up of why I'm actually getting in there. Why do I think that area is a good area in order to do a development? So those are the things that I will look at. This is another site called REIV, which is Real Estate Institute of Victoria. I think they've already got one for they've got REIQ, they've got REINSW, and they've got REIWA as well for different suburbs. And these sites also have these heat maps. Not as good as what realestate.com.au has, but this is pretty good because realestate.com.au only recently came up with this after their last update. Before that, they didn't have any, and I used to still use this website. And what I like about this is that when I click on something, it also gives me the upper quartile and lower quartile and the median value, so which is quite good. So I can monitor a few things here. But this area, like for example, after Mordialloc, it's Aspendale, Edith Vale, and Chelsea. They haven't got those, so they haven't got any data for Edith Vale and Aspendale. So this is the area. These are the two areas that I'm actually doing a development, and I had a hard time finding good comparables in order to do something. So now it's telling me Chelsea's gone down -4.5%, which is, you know, the median value. So I don't know where they're getting this median value, which is actually the right in the middle. So it could be like a very small shitty unit that would have sold for right in the middle, which is the median value. Now median is not the average value, it's median value is right in the middle. So somewhere in the middle, the value in Chelsea has gone down for whatever reason, and everything along this area actually doesn't move at all when it's winter. And in Melbourne, we are just finishing off winter and getting into spring. I think by the end of September, we would well and truly be in spring. So these are again areas trying. I'm just slowly and steadily moving into finding out what I can do in different suburbs. So say for example, this is much better because they probably have details about Aspendale. So in Aspendale, they're saying that the median is about 805, but the end value is about 1.1 mil. So there are options to do stuff here. And Edith Vale is this. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sell my units at 670, 700, and so on. Melbourne House Hunter, this is another site that popped up when I was searching for Growth Suburbs. So this is another site that came up. You get a list from REIV, $1 million suburbs, Growth Suburbs, so you can click on it and see where you want to be, where you shouldn't be. So for example, Toorak is 4.5 mil, which is everything starts from 4.5 mil, which I don't really get because 700-800 square meter blocks with a single house on it and a basement on it are usually 4.5 mil. Yeah, but it is Toorak. So yeah. Again, you can do the same thing. Another thing that I do is I always look at the development plan. Sorry, I'll just go back, that's what I was looking for. So I go to these websites where it talks about Brisbane development, urban development, and infrastructure news, and I want to know. So if I'm in Melbourne, I want to read the Melbourne 2050 plan. I want to read Brisbane City Plan 2014 if I'm in Brisbane. So that tells me what's going on there. That tells me where is the government planning to do their next infrastructure spending, or they're developing a new infrastructure or a new train lines going somewhere. Those are the things that I look at. So this is brisbanedevelopment.com, and they talk about all the different kinds of developments that are going on in the area. This could also give me information about the places where I want to stay away from. So say for example, I don't want to be close to this tower because this tower would have just too much competition, and imagine I'm doing 4 townhouses or something close by where this luxury thing comes up, which would have a whole lot of marketing behind it. Now this is in Gold Coast though, but I'm just giving you an example here. So business economic development plan. I don't know if you are from Brisbane and you are in property development, you must read every page of this. We have the same thing in Melbourne, which is called Plan Melbourne, and this is, and I have read this, document just to understand what they are planning to do, where they are planning to go, and that just keeps me up to date with what's going on. I'll show you some examples of like for example, I look at everything. Where's my? Just give me 1 second. Now this is the Southeast Growth Corridor Plan. Now all this information is available freely. So why I picked up Southeast, because this is the area in Melbourne that I'm more active in, and it's telling me what's happening at different places. So I'll look at, so for example, it's talking about regional active open space. So it's talking about central activity area, principal town center. It's talking about opportunity for future rail stations. So I've got to look at, okay, it's a little bit hard to move that way. So all I'm doing is looking for this kind of symbol. So I've got one here, I've got one here. So this is where they might put a train line in future. This is the existing train line. So, and I want to see what this gray area is all about. The gray area is existing urban area. Then you've got urban growth boundary, which basically means the subdivision laws would change from this point onwards. So say for example, I might be able to subdivide into, I might be able to put 4 townhouses on a block of land here, but when I go here, I can only put a single dwelling. So they have all sorts of these things. I've been to council for a while back for a major parcel of land which just was on the other side of the urban growth boundary, and which basically means that they will not allow high density development here, and not even high density, not even medium density. So if you've got like an acre block, they might only let you divide that in 2 blocks rather than 50 blocks. You know what I mean? So you have to have these growth corridors and all these things for Melbourne, for Brisbane, for Sydney, for Perth. So all you have to do is come back here and say Sydney growth corridors, and Sydney's Growth Centre's website comes up. If I'm from Sydney, I would study this site in and out, find out where the infrastructure is going, find out what's happening there, why should I be there, all these things would help me choose a location to target. And it might well also mean that, okay, it's going there already, the growth's already happened, I may steer away from it. So so these are the things that are important for you to know. So say for example, if I was to do Perth, let's say Perth growth 8 plan urban growth areas, Department of Planning. This is planning.wa.gov.au. Perth corridor growth corridor infrastructure plan. Now, so if I'm from Perth, I would be studying this whole thing thoroughly, because they don't talk about what's happening in the next year or 12 months. They look at 30 years to 20 years to 50 years ahead, and that helps us understand where the population density is going to move, where the new infrastructure is going to come in, and if I was to do something there, how far away should I be in order to be in that area. So these are for Perth, for example, like they've got 100 positive, I don't know what this is. This is some sort of a website for labor. So Perth Growth Corridor Infrastructure Plan. So they will talk about whatever that plan is. But the thing is, you've got to read more, and then you stumble upon another article, then you'll pick up something, and I just select that and right click and look up whatever that I found over there. Sorry, not look up, but I'll just go search Google for whatever I've just found in that article. So more articles come up and I read more. And you would say, look, you've got all this time in the world. No, I haven't got all this time, but I do look at all these things before I get into a project, before I start selecting my suburbs and so on. And after a while, you realize some of the developments that I do, for example, 5 townhouses, 12 townhouses, it just becomes bread and butter stuff. because I've done so many developments in that area. I know what's happening. So so I look at it, I look at the value of the land. Yeah, that works. Well, let's get it. If I look at something and I'll say, oh, that's too much, sorry, walk away. It's only when I'm getting into something that I need to look at all of this, and it helps me. Why? Because, say for example, in Melbourne, I'm telling you now, and in 4 or 5 years you will realize this, there's a suburb called Seafood, and Seafood is going to become the next hotspot in the southeastern region. And I'm only talking about my region. There are many other hotspots in the western suburbs of Melbourne, but I don't work in that area. It's too far away from me, so I tend to stick here. This area along this Nepean highway, I'm actually looking at a deal and negotiating a deal at the moment, which is going to be about 22-25 townhouses. Now that might go into pipeline now, come back, it'll come out on the other end in about 18 months or so. But I am looking at a deal here in Seaford. But Seaford has a lot of bad areas, so you need to make sure that you are close to amenities, close to the train station. I'm actually looking at a site somewhere close to this area. I don't want to point too much, but it's a major site. So Seaford will come up. And as far as there's another prediction I'm telling you, that the RBA is going to bring the interest rate to 0%, and it will happen in the next 12-24 months or so. The banks won't pass that on, but because banks can never pass that on, but RBA will be at 0%. They will go to 0%. This is for New South Wales, but this is more like a council level. So this is local planning and zoning, and I'll talk more about local planning and zoning in next month's video, where I get into the street level and zonings and all those things. But this is again, this is talking about the local area and so on. So Department of Planning, again, the same side. I wanted to show you what I would do is when I'm looking at, say for example, I selected a suburb. Now this, for example, is Everton Park. I'll plant all this data on whatever data I could get on sales. I would actually put it on Google Maps, and you guys can go there. I've actually got a link there, but if you don't know, you can copy it down now. So just go to google.com/maps/DU0/ whatever that is. So I don't know, if you just go to /maps, does that take you the same place? It takes you to a different map. Now this is the map engine, that's why I like it. This is different from Google, just Google Maps. This is some kind of a Google My Maps or whatever that is, where I can actually create a new map and import data from an Excel sheet. So I covered this a while back in one, and it's got different layers. And I can go back and access the ones that I've already created. So say for example, this is Everton Park that I wanted to show you. And you could actually go to the street level and zoom in and select something, and on the left side it shows you the price, how was it sold, the address, what it had, some features that it had, and so on, and which was what agent or realty sold it. So those are the things that you got to remember. You got to look at when you are zeroing in. When you start zeroing in on the suburb level, and I'll cover that in the next month's video. Now we've got enough time for some questions, so I would really love to answer a few questions if you have some. But what I would really want to tell you is this: all that I've discussed, this video would be online in the webinar section, I think in the next couple of days, because it takes time for me to edit and process and upload and embed. But it will be available right here in the bonuses and webinar section. And everything that I've discussed here, except for auto alerts, is all in this section right here. If you haven't watched all these videos, I would strongly recommend that you do that, so that next month when you see me, you've done some homework. You can ask me some questions. You can shortlist some suburbs and say, look, I couldn't find anything there. Where should I look? What else can I do to find that out? Or I'm having trouble with this. that's when you'll maximize me being here and helping you out with what you can do, what you can't do. But if you don't do anything and you just rock up for the webinar, then you don't ask any questions, and then nothing much happens. So I've got a question here. Amber, can you please send me the link to the Google website with the map for? I'm actually gonna put this in the chat section somewhere where everybody can get it. I'll see if I can put it somewhere. Chat. I've just sent a link to that Google Maps. I hope everyone gets it. If you look in the chat window, there should be a link there. That's the link to those Google Maps, so that you guys can start importing data there. There's actually a video in the course where it's called Spatial Analysis. I'm just trying to find where would that video be. Here. This video called Spatial Analysis under Due Diligence. This video shows you how you can put all this data on Google Maps and the Excel data and so on. So yeah, any other questions? Hello? Do you find that the inner city areas go through a period of deterioration and growth? Inner city areas, I have not seen that the property prices have fallen. So let's go back here to realestate.com.au and let's go to invest. Dion, what state are you from? Okay, I'll just pick an example from Victoria, let's say. So inner city suburbs, unless so say for example I'm in Glen Waverley, unless people start putting in townhouse after townhouse after townhouse, that's when I will see that suddenly there's an oversupply there. But what's happening is that the oversupply of apartments is more concentrated more towards the city, and I'm not even making anything that caters to the same kind of audience as those apartments would. So I don't worry about that influx, that glut of apartments that are happening. Why? Because first, I'm not doing apartments. Second, there are no apartments close to where I'm developing townhouses. Third, I've picked up that area based on what's about to happen in that area. I'm in Edithvale, and at the moment they've got a Skyrail thing planning, and now all the councils have actually filed a petition against that Skyrail, so that the Skyrail actually goes underground. And a lot of people are saying no Skyrail. The rail train line has to the trains. Actually, there is railway crossing that have to be made underground. And once that happens, everything on both sides of Nepean Highway, where I operate, is going to go through the roof, because suddenly the roads will become wider, and there'll be less traffic jams. The boom gates would be gone, and people would be able to walk straight to the beach without having to without having to cross the train line. So that would actually increase this. Now, when would that happen? We will find out towards the end of the year. At the moment, there are all sorts of petitions happening against that rail line and so on. So those are the reasons that I'm here. And I've got no competition with any kind of apartments. There's no apartments going up here. Another thing that I do is I go to this site called it's called here. So if I go to Edithville and I look at units, it's quite hot at the moment. The demand supply ratio score is 31. If this was here in red and orange, or even slightly greener, I would have known that this is a declining market. So if I go into Suburb stats, and I look over here, let me look at stock on the market is 0.69%, which basically there's not a lot of stock on the market. That helps me to say, okay, I can bring in 12 townhouses there and the market will absorb it because there's not a lot of stock there. I look at rental yield 3.74, all right. Auction clearance rate about 74%, which is good. Yes, vendor discounting is a little bit higher, which basically tells me that if I want to sell something for 690, I'll put it on the market for 730. And because the market has become a little bit bearish. Why? Because people are scared. There's a lot of uncertainty about our deficit, about our government, about the elections, and so on. So deals from ACT. So if I was in ACT, not airport, but I just want to be, let's say, ACT. Now I've got to pick up a suburb in ACT. I can't just pick up ACT, but this is close enough. We can zoom in and zoom out and see what it looks like. So let's zoom in a little bit more. It's loading, come on. So it's telling me, so you would know Canberra better than I do because I've never been to Canberra. I've just sort of zoomed past it, but I've actually not been to Canberra. So you've got all these suburbs where, so let's say it looks like it's pretty orange, which tells me that it's a little bit hot. So the annual growth rate is about 0.4% and the rental yield is 4.7, median price 423. What's happening here? So 490, and what's happening right here? See, if I was to do something in Canberra, I wouldn't go any far away from here. I would stay somewhere right here. But the annual growth's gone down here, so I want to stay away from it again. So let's look at this. The median price 608. So this I would say would be the most livable place, or right next to the Parliament, or it could be a place right next to the CBD. That's what it looks like. So I have to be careful of not going to places where the annual growth rate shows negative. So like for example, in this area, it shows negative 3.7. Now there's nothing available there. What you can do also is scroll down right here and pick up, let's say you want to do 2-bedroom units or 2-bedroom houses. So select both of them, and okay, there's no data for that. Okay, it's picking up forest. Let's go, what is this area? City. Oh, that's city. Barton. Let's go to Barton. So let's come down in here and select Barton. So if you look at 2 options selected, so I've got 2-bedroom, let's turn that off and see 2-bedroom units. The price went up and then it's suddenly gone down. This has happened in the last 1 year. If I look at 10-year, they don't have enough data to show, but what they are saying is that there were 11 sales in 2015 for 655k. Market demand in Barton for 2 units was really good in the last couple of years, but it started to decline. So just because you're from Barton, that doesn't actually mean that you can't do a development somewhere else. I'll tell you my story. When I started this, Melbourne was like that. In 2012, Melbourne had rock bottom, and I couldn't find a single deal in Melbourne where, every time I went to this Boom app or whatever that is, everything was, it showed everything in red and yellow, which told me that, I don't want to spend any money there. So I did my first development in Brisbane, but the first development actually finished 3 years later, and I had already done 5 more developments like that, the townhouse developments, in Victoria, in the same amount of time. Um, Found that around Civic there is old areas with old house that can be replaced with newer townhouses and multi units. Makes sense. What are you saying? Thanks, Amber. Okay. What is this area called? Civic. So let's look at. Oops. So where is Civic? Here. If I want to search Civic, for example, I'll go here. And see. Oh, am I searching it wrong, or am I main city area? Sorry, main city area and surround. Sorry, city area. Okay. Oh, you meant city area. Sorry, sorry. I it said Civic, so I got confused. So let's go back here. If it's a city area, the city will always be populated. Go into ACD right here, and see, now we've got a better map. Knew something was wrong. All the colors were missing. So if you are close to the city center, like this is all city, and you've got a location where, just be careful, because all old houses close to the city usually have a heritage overlay on them. So you can't really touch the facade of it. So just be careful of the heritage overlay in that area, which we will discuss in the next month's video. But if the project stacks up and you see that there is demand over there, and you look at all these things, see where the graph's moving. If the graph's pointing down, I would be very wary of doing a development in that area. But if it's in the city, you're getting a good price or a longer settlement or something like that. Something else has to be happening for that site. So if you get into something and you say, and the guy says, okay, I can give it to you for X amount of money, but I'm happy to wait for 18 months for you to come in and out of the council. Might in 18 months you can organize your plans, permit, line up all your ducks without actually settling on it. So no money is going out of your pocket apart from what you need to get the plans and permit. And you are basically ready for construction before you actually settle. I do this all the time. I never have any, okay, here's the land, no permit, sorry, settlement in 60 days. I don't want to do a development like that, because for me, time is money, and I can't settle on something and then wait and go through the planning process for 12 months. There's no way I would do that, and I wouldn't recommend anybody to do that. So yeah. Any other questions? All right. Then I'll catch you guys next month, because this goes on. There's gonna be a webinar every month. So until you guys get sick of me, you are more than welcome to join the webinar every month. So wish you guys all the very best, and I'll catch you next time.